Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in. I recently clocked 18 months on the Toyota Prado and decided to shoot some video just to let you know about the pros and cons and what I think is good and bad. If you can really smash that subscribe button down there, I'd appreciate it. It helps the channel, helps the algorithm. But please watch the video and hear my thoughts on what's good and bad about the Toyota Landcruiser. Cheers. So hi everybody, it's Peter from Prado Places Oz. I thought it was a good time to do an 18-month review on my Landcruiser Prado. So if you live in Australia, you're probably very familiar with that Prado name. If you live in other parts of the world, it's probably just called the Landcruiser. I've actually had this car now for 18 months and during that time I've actually done 53,000 kilometers. So most of my driving has been highway driving, and I guess what I would say is if you're a highway cruiser or you're a tourer like I am, this is a fantastic car. However, let's be honest, let's talk about the pros and the cons. If you live in the city, if you do short trips, you're probably not going to find this car that great because it can be very heavy on fuel when you do short stop-start city trips. For me, I live on the outskirts of a city and it's semi-rural. Most of my trips are long highway Ks. So for me, I'm averaging probably 7.5 to 8 litres per 100 kilometers. And that's actually within the specifications of what Toyota say you should expect. On some long trips where I've actually traveled several hundred Ks, I've averaged as low as 7.2. So I think it comes back to what you want the car for. I'm actually not a four-wheel driver in terms of I don't really go and do the muddy tracks and a lot of heavy off-road stuff. I do gravel, I do some sand, and mostly highway. So for me, this car perfectly fits what I need. As I say, it's horses for courses. This car can be very expensive on fuel. What makes it even worse for fuel is if you're one of these people who's going to heavily modify your vehicle. So as soon as you put on a bull bar, a roof rack, a snorkel, a whole load of other stuff, you add a lot of weight to it, it's probably going to add to that fuel problem, and you're probably going to see figures that are like 12 or 13 litres per 100 kilometers. So let's talk about the car. This is actually a 2021 Prado. I purchased it in February 2021 and it was the new model that they just updated. So what did they update in that car? Firstly, the engine had an update and so did the gearbox. The engine now delivers 150 kilowatts of power and 500 Newton meters of torque. A significant improvement on the old car, which was 130. They've also made some other changes, such as adding things in like Apple CarPlay, which was severely lacking in Toyota. And that brings me, I guess, to another thing I don't like so much about the Toyota Landcruiser Prado. And that is, if you like your tech gadgets, you're going to hate this car. This car is very basic. Now, I don't have a top-of-the-range model. This car is what we call in Australia the GXL. It's the third in a list of 4 variants that you can get, so it's the second lowest spec. The only tech in this car is really Apple CarPlay. Currently in this car I don't have blind spot warnings in the mirrors. However, that is available in higher models, and I do understand Toyota are making that standard in all of their Prado models from the new models onwards. The other thing that's really lacking in this car is USB sockets. There is one USB socket, and that you have to plug your phone into to use the Apple CarPlay. I actually have a converter that actually converts the 12-volt cigarette lighter to give me additional USB capability. But high tech is something this car isn't. It has analog gauges. However, it does have a central multifunction unit in which you can also see a digital speedometer. Most of the tech in this car is what I would call low tech. In fact, things like the reversing camera are again quite poor for a car of this value. I think if you want an SUV or a four-wheel drive that's actually got high tech, have a look at things like a Hyundai or a Kia. A friend of mine recently bought a Kia, and the tech in that is absolutely fantastic. Having said that though, a Toyota Landcruiser Prado offers you many, many other things. It's robust. It is sturdy. It was actually built in Japan by people who seem to like building cars, unlike other brands of four-wheel drive I could name. Everything feels rugged. Everything feels hard-wearing. Everything feels like it's going to last. And in fact, Land Cruisers in Australia last for many, many years, and people buy them and rarely sell them. So, how would I sum up this car in terms of an overall summary? Well, it's well built, it's solid, it's robust, it gives you a feeling of security. It's got a very high driving position, so you've got a wonderful view of the road. Visibility wise, it's extremely good. From the back window, even though I've got the spare tyre mounted on the back, I've got excellent visibility. It's got these fantastic large driving mirrors on the doors, which really negate the need for having blind spot warnings, because I can see everything down the side of this car quite clearly. The other thing I like about this car is that it's fairly straightforward. If you look at the buttons, they are all simple, they're large, they feel solid, they don't feel like they're going to fall apart. And that is something I really like. They're easy to see, they're easy to reach, and they're very functional. In terms of space, this car is fantastic. The front seats are very supportive, they're very wide, and they're very comfortable. And in fact, one of the reasons I purchased this car was for doing highway touring. And in fact, in a few days, I'm taking this car on a 3,000 kilometer trip across the Bass Strait to Tasmania. And I will be making some videos on that trip as well. In the rear of this car, it's really designed for families. There's plenty of space for your kids. And although this is a 7-seater, I've actually got the third row of seats flattened down. There's plenty of space in this car with the third row folded down. Probably about 600 litres of space behind the second row of seats. One other thing you should probably think about if you're thinking on buying a Land Cruiser Prado is to make a decision as to whether you want the spare tyre mounted on the back like I have, or actually beneath the car. Now, there is a serious implication in making that choice, because with the spare tyre on the back of the car, you get the additional fuel tank, which gives you 150 litre capacity. And that is really, really important if you live somewhere like Australia, where you may want to go off-road and cross very remote areas. It gives you that capability of obviously storing a larger amount of fuel. If you make the choice to have the spare wheel mounted beneath the car at the rear, you actually lose that 68 litre additional tank, and you're back to an 82 litre fuel tank. So that is something, when you option your car, you should think carefully about. I personally think it's better to put the spare wheel on the back, because I think in an aftermarket sales situation, you will appeal to a wider audience in terms of people who might want to purchase your car. The other thing that some people don't like about the Prado is the rear door. Now the rear door opens as a barn style door, and it is extremely heavy. Now there is a locking mechanism for it, and certainly on windy days, if you have that door open, I strongly recommend that you lock it open, because if the wind gets it and it slams on a small child or your fingers, it's going to do some serious damage. In terms of modifications, I really haven't made many modifications to this car at all. I have done a couple of things. I've actually changed out the original wheels and tires. Toyota's actually come with Grand Trek tires. It seems to be across the whole range that Toyota specify Grand Trek tires from the factory, and I've recently put some new wheels on this car, a wider wheel, and I've also upgraded the tires to the Falcon Wild Peak, which is the subject of another video that I have actually posted. The Falcon tires are really good. I think they are excellent in wet and dry weather, and if you read other reviews on YouTube, you will see that many people strongly recommend them. And since I've had them on this car, I can only say that I'm highly pleased with them. And although I thought they might be a little bit noisy, that hasn't proven that to be the case. So I've been driving, making this video. I don't know how bad the road noise is that you're hearing, but to me it doesn't seem to be much louder than with the original tires. The other modification I have made is just to put a drawer system in the back. Again, I've tried to do this without taking out the third row of seats, so the drawers are sitting actually on the top of the third row where they fold into the floor. Many people option to take that third row of seats out and fix the drawers to the frame of the car. I've chosen in this instance not to do that, mainly because when I do move this car on and sell it in the future, I want to be able to take out those drawers and not have damaged in any way the third row of seats. So that's again something that you should think about if you're putting drawers in. One small area that annoyed me was in the storage areas. I found that when I put my keys or my sunglasses or other odds and ends in the storage areas, because they were plastic, they actually rattled around quite a bit. To overcome that problem, I actually just purchased some marine carpet, which is fairly thin, and I just sliced that up and stuck it in to the plastic areas, and it certainly addressed that rattling problem. So I'd certainly suggest, if you store areas, if you've got keys and that, and they're rattling around, that you think about doing that. One other thing obviously about the Landcruiser is the driving position. When you're sitting in the driver's seat and you're looking out the window, you've got that nice high driving position. You've got a fantastic view of the road, and the visibility is excellent. The seats are extremely comfortable, and if you do long distance trips like I do, you will find them extremely comfortable over a period of number of hours whilst you're driving. I get loads of questions about in the comments on my channel is what's happened about the diesel particulate filter. So I'm sure many people would know that Toyota had a class action, which I think still hasn't been fully settled, where a lot of models that were sold between 2015 and 2019 especially suffered problems with their diesel particulate filter. So what is a diesel particulate filter? Well, it's actually a clever piece of technology that fits in the exhaust system, and it actually reduces the noxious gases and particulate matter that comes from diesel vehicles. With earlier vehicles, Toyota had a problem in this wasn't burning off properly, and that resulted in the diesel particulate filter clogging up and causing engine management problems. Since 2019, with the advent of the new engine and gearbox, Toyota made efforts to actually fix this problem, and they did actually redesign the diesel particulate filter. It has a new filter fitted, and since that has occurred, and certainly in my own experience of owning this vehicle, there's been absolutely no further problems with the diesel particulate filter. What happens now, and it's pretty much as regular as clockwork, is that every 300 Ks the diesel particulate filter will burn off. What Toyota recommends is that when that signal comes on the multifunction display down here on the dashboard, is that you drive your car for about 15 to 20 minutes between 60 and 80 kilometers an hour, and you drive it constantly, preferably on a highway or a motorway. Now, the reason they suggest that is that the diesel particulate filter needs high temperature to actually burn off the particulate matter. In my experience, it takes between 15 and 20 minutes. Sometimes it can be a little bit faster than that. I find if I'm doing highway driving at 110 or 120 Ks an hour, then the particulate filter certainly burns off a lot faster than that. But I think I can assure anybody who's buying a newer Landcruiser Prado that this issue has been fixed, and in my experience, having this car for 18 months, I've had absolutely no problems at all with the diesel particulate filter. The other question I get asked fairly regularly is about running costs. Now, one of the downsides of owning a Landcruiser is that Toyota recommends it is serviced every 6 months, regardless of the mileage. And in fact, it does say in the handbook 6 months or 10,000 Ks, whichever comes first. That means for somebody like me, who's done 53,000 kilometers in 18 months, my car's been in the Toyota dealership quite frequently. I have actually had the benefit, though, of cap price servicing. And in fact, people do ask me how much it costs to service the car. I think from my experience that it's been under 300 Australian dollars per service. And as I say, this car has had probably 4 services since I've owned it in the 18 months. And I would highly recommend that you do follow that schedule, as you can invalidate your warranty. It's probably the most annoying thing, I guess, about owning a Landcruiser Prado, is that the frequency of service intervals every 6 months is a little bit inconvenient, and you are probably spending a little bit more money on servicing. The offset of that, obviously, is that the cut price servicing keeps the costs down and is fairly manageable. But I always think it's pretty pointless having a nice car if you can't afford the servicing and maintenance costs of it. One other thing I do like about this car is the ride. It's got coil springs all round. It's got a very, very generous suspension travel, which obviously enables it to drive over very rough terrain. But what that means is it does tend to soak up the bumps pretty well. Certainly in Australia, where our roads are not the greatest, and we do, and certainly after the weather we've had a lot of potholes in the road. This type of a suspension, certainly with the tyres I've got fitted, has made the ride actually quite comfortable. So the suspension is soft. One of the actual downsides of having that soft suspension is there is a little bit of body roll in the corners, and certainly if you're a speedster, you're not going to want to take in corners at high speeds in a Landcruiser. All in all, though, the ride is extremely comfortable, and as I say, I do mainly highway driving and touring, so for me that's just what I need. So we should probably talk about the cost of fuel, because certainly here in Australia, and I think if you're watching this in other parts of the world, the cost of fuel has gone through the roof recently. Currently here in Australia, we're paying over $2 Australian a litre for diesel, which means filling this car up with a 150 litre fuel tank is significantly north of 300 Australian dollars. So it can be quite expensive to run. And as I alluded to earlier, if you do live in the inner city, or if your Prado is heavily modified with bull bars, snorkels, roof racks, and all the off-roading gear, it can actually make your fuel consumption quite heavy. And I think if you do live in an inner city area and will be using this as a daily driver, doing short stop-start trips, it's probably not going to be the car for you. Whilst we're talking about inner city driving, the other downside to this car is maneuverability in small spaces. It's a big car, and if you do live in the inner city and have to park in quite tight and quite narrow multi-story car parks, you need to take a lot of care whilst you're driving around, because it's very easy in this car to scrape it on the sides of multi-story car parks. So if you do a lot of four-wheel driving, the Prado is set up really well for those activities, obviously. In terms of four-wheel driving controls, there's obviously a high and a low range. There is a center and a rear differential lock, which will get you out of most problems. Certainly, probably if you are going to use this for regular off-roading, I would suggest that you change the tires. Certainly from other YouTubers I listen to and experienced four-wheel drivers, of which I am not, I think the Grand Trek tires which come shipped with this vehicle are really not going to be adequate if you want to go serious off-roading, and I would strongly recommend that you go to an appropriate tire for the sort of four-wheel driving that you do. In terms of storage space, this car has got adequate storage. There are 2 drink holders in the front, there are drink holders in the door pockets, and certainly in the back there is a folding armrest with drink holders, and also in the door pockets as well. So my final summary: I'm obviously a Toyota Landcruiser fan. However, it does have its limitations, and it does suffer with a lack of technology. If you are a technophobe and you like your technology, you probably won't like this car very much. However, if you like simple, if you like rugged, if you like reliable, and if you just want a car that's going to reliably get you from A to B on long trips or trips through the outback, you cannot go past a Toyota Landcruiser.